The Netflix series Black Rabbit tells the exciting story of two brothers who end up in an untenable predicament because of their tendency to look for mischief together at every opportunity. The owner of the most exciting new restaurant in New York, Jake Friedkin, is an ambitious individual. But when his older brother, Vince, unexpectedly returns to town, his luck quickly starts to improve. The couple is at the top of local dangerous bookmaker Joe Mancuso's list when the latter's presence uncovers a world of past difficulties. In spite of this, the Friedkins remain united and attempt to fight their way out of every tight spot they find themselves in. That is, until their commitment to one another is pushed to the limit by the very real possibility of losing everything. As their hectic lives come to a close, the brothers will eventually have to face a finale they never could have predicted. Jake Friedkin is in New York getting ready for one of the most significant evenings for Black Rabbit, his restaurant, which is anticipating a visit from a well-known critic. It would only take one positive review to solidify the small establishment's status in the city's culture, providing the owner with the legitimacy to persuade his investors to move the brand to a second, more noticeable location. Vince, his brother, attempts to sell his father's penny collection in order to get quick cash, but he gets caught in a robbery. Even though he escapes the event unscathed, he is left impoverished and accountable for one dead body. In order to stay low for a time, he is forced to contact his brother and persuade him to pay for a vacation to New York. But the city that never sleeps is the furthest thing from safe, and that's what Vince is in for. The older brother also left behind a substantial debt of $140,000 when he last left the area. Because of this, when the dishonest creditor Junior, the son of the well-respected but deadly bookmaker Mancuso, finds out about Vince's comeback, it naturally upsets him. The latter is fortunate because Jake already has plans to sell their mother's house and make a sizable profit within a few weeks. At about the same time, Jake's favorite bartender, Anna, starts missing shifts, which gives Vince the ideal opportunity to reintegrate into his brother's life by taking over his former responsibilities. Regretfully, his attempts to start over fail along with the house's selling. In response, Vince seeks to earn enough money to pay off his debts and reverts to his old, unhealthy compulsions. In the end, Junior and his partner Babbitt only give him a severed finger and one spectacular defeat as compensation for his difficulties. Jake suffers the consequences of Anna's dismissal at the same time, particularly as Roxy, his head chef, discovers the complexity of the circumstance. Additionally, the failed house transaction has a direct influence on his expansion plans. Even worse, his plans are totally dependent on the pool room and a Four Seasons building, which is a resource that will only be available to him for a short time. For the same reason, the restaurant owner could not have waited any longer to learn of his brother's troubles. Nevertheless, he consents to assist him, entering to personally negotiate with Mancuso. The bookmaker consents to installment payments, but the brothers are still in such dire straits that even that option is untenable. But when Vince suggests holding a fictitious charity dinner to raise enough cash to settle the bill in full, things start to improve. Even though the event is still profitable, Jake uses the majority of the proceeds to balance his restaurant finances, so the high doesn't last long. After Anna's suspected death forces Detective Ellen Heung to investigate the Black Rabbit, things eventually get out of hand. The two brothers' conflict intensifies as the strain builds, culminating in a robbery at the restaurant where Vince is wearing a ski mask and Jake is brandishing his gun. Nevertheless, in order to preserve Jake's life, the older brother murders Junior. The latter is unwilling to abandon his sibling in spite of the complex circumstances. However, when Mancuso threatens Vince's daughter Jen's life, he loses control of the decision. As a result, Jake is forced to sell his brother out, endangering his life and then hurrying to save it. The older brother, however, lacks the same optimism, even though he keeps battling for Vince's survival despite overwhelming odds. As soon as Vince gets back to New York, his life is still in danger. Even though the Friedkins had a history with Joe Mancuso Jr., his son has no plans to let his older brother to get away with it as long as his obligation is not settled. For him, the problem threatens his authority and ego. When Jake confronts Junior and pays off the debt with his father, it naturally touches a nerve. He chooses to carry out the heist at the Black Rabbit despite Mancuso's prohibition for the same reason. He makes Vince play the part after his own partner declines to help and abet in the crime. In order to spare Jake's life, the older brother shoots the would-be mafia boss, which ultimately results in his death. But by doing so, he jeopardizes his personal security. Notwithstanding the conflict between Mancuso and his son, the bookmaker is motivated to get revenge for the latter's passing. As a result, he locates Vince using Jake and Jen. Nevertheless, Vince escapes with his life thanks to his own cunning and his brother's perfect timing. Even better, Jake tells him that he has a plan to get him out of the nation in order to save his life. The restaurant owner has the ability to use secrets against Campbell, the troubleshooter for a wealthy and powerful artist, because of some dubious enterprises. As a result, he offers to trade in a precious thumb drive in order to help his brother leave the country safely. This ultimately returns the brothers to Black Rabbit. Despite the fact that police officers are stationed all around the site, Jake is confident that Campbell will show up and save his brother. However, Vince has a clearer perspective because his head is truly on the chopping block. In relation to the robbery and shooting that occurred at the restaurant, the police are already searching for him. Likewise, Mancuso will ultimately catch up to the brothers and have his retribution. It will just take time. Furthermore, Vince is aware that he would be endangering his family even if he were to somehow elude fate and flee the nation alive. His entrance in New York has directly endangered Jake and Jen in only the past month. Beyond that, though, he holds himself responsible for dragging his brother along in their lives. Vince's life has been determined by the awful hand he was given, which led to addiction and violence beginning at an early age. The older brother repeatedly paves the way for something amazing before letting his own destructive impulses ruin it. For the same reason, Vince surrenders by calling the police after disclosing some of his most severe problems. Jake's first instinct is to fall with him. His brother acknowledges the same and knows that removing himself from the younger man's life is the best way to keep him out of danger. As a result, Vince ultimately chooses to take the fall alone and accept responsibility for all of their errors.